Every morning you eat breakfast, and every morning, without knowing it, you're quietly telling your body to store fat, not because of what you eat, because of the order you eat it in. Your body doesn't just measure calories. It doesn't care about your macros the way fitness influencers do. What your body actually responds to, what it has been biologically wired to respond to for 300,000 years of human evolution, is sequence. The order in which food enters your gut, and that sequence triggers a cascade of hormonal events that determines, within minutes, whether the next 6 hours of your life are spent burning fat or locking it away. Most people have it completely backwards. And the worst part? The diet industry knows this and has never told you. What you're about to hear isn't a diet tip. It's a biological truth that was hiding inside peer-reviewed research for over a decade before anyone thought to translate it into something you could actually use at breakfast tomorrow. Let's start with what's actually happening inside your body right now. Every time you eat, your pancreas fires a hormone called insulin. Think of insulin not as a villain, because most people have been told to fear it without understanding it, but as a gatekeeper, a highly sensitive, evolutionarily ancient gatekeeper whose entire job is to respond to glucose in your blood and decide, does this get burned for energy or stored for later? The problem isn't insulin itself. The problem is the spike. When insulin rises sharply and suddenly, what researchers call a postprandial insulin spike, your body interprets that signal as an emergency. It locks fat cells shut. It pulls circulating energy out of the bloodstream and packs it away. And it does something else that nobody talks about. It triggers hunger again within 2 to 3 hours, even if you just ate a full meal. This is why you can eat breakfast and be starving by 10 a.m. This isn't willpower. This is biochemistry running exactly as designed, except the design was never meant for the breakfast you're eating. Now here's where it starts to get strange. In 2015, researchers at the Weill Cornell Medical College ran a study that would quietly rewrite everything we thought we understood about food and blood sugar. They took a group of participants and fed them the exact same meal, same calories, same macronutrients, down to the gram. The only variable they changed was the order in which the food was eaten. One group ate carbohydrates first, then protein and fat. The other group ate protein and fat first, then carbohydrates. The insulin response wasn't slightly different, it was dramatically, shockingly different. The group that ate protein and fat first, specifically starting with eggs, showed insulin spikes that were nearly 50% lower than the group that ate carbohydrates first. Same meal, same calories, half the insulin response. That number should stop you cold for a moment, because if you've ever struggled with belly fat, afternoon energy crashes, sugar cravings, or a metabolism that feels like it's running in reverse, the answer may never have been what you're eating. It's been when within the meal you're eating it. But here's where it gets interesting. Because the eggs aren't just a passive player in this story, they're the trigger. Your gut isn't just a tube that processes food, it's an intelligent signaling organ with over 500 million neurons, more computing power than your spinal cord, and it communicates directly with your pancreas, your brain, and your fat cells in a language made entirely of hormones. When protein, specifically the amino acid profile found in whole eggs, makes first contact with your gut lining, something remarkable happens. Specialized cells called enteroendocrine cells release a hormone called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. This is the same hormone that billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies are now synthesizing artificially and selling as injectable weight loss drugs. Your body produces it naturally, for free, at breakfast. If you eat in the right order, GLP-1 does several things simultaneously. It slows gastric emptying, meaning food moves through your digestive system more slowly, blunting the rate at which glucose enters your bloodstream. It signals your pancreas to produce insulin more gradually rather than in a sharp spike. And it sends a satiety signal to your hypothalamus, the hunger control center in your brain, that suppresses appetite for hours. But the egg specifically brings something else to this equation, cholecystokinin, or CCK, another gut hormone released in direct response to egg protein and fat. CCK amplifies the GLP-1 signal, further slows digestion, and, here's what almost no one talks about, directly inhibits the enzyme lipase from being overactivated in a way that promotes fat storage. When you eat the egg first, you're not just eating protein. You're essentially pre-programming your hormonal environment before any carbohydrate enters the picture. You're building a biochemical buffer. Then, when the carbohydrate arrives, whether it's toast, oatmeal, fruit, it enters a gut already saturated with GLP-1 and CCK. Gastric emptying is already slowed. Insulin secretion is already being modulated. The glucose from that carbohydrate trickles into your bloodstream instead of flooding it. The spike never comes. And without the spike, the fat cell lockdown never happens. This is what researchers Alpana Shukla and Louis Aron at Cornell were documenting. Not a theory, not a hypothesis, a measurable, reproducible physiological event that you can trigger yourself tomorrow morning with 2 eggs and a shift in sequence. Now here's the part that caught even the researchers off guard. The benefits didn't stop at insulin. When participants in the sequence studies had their blood drawn 2 and 3 hours post-meal, something unexpected showed up. Lower circulating ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and measurably higher peptide YY, a hormone that reinforces satiety. In plain terms, the people who ate protein first weren't just experiencing lower blood sugar. They were less hungry, for hours. Not because they ate more food or fewer carbs, but because the sequence of consumption had fundamentally altered their hormonal landscape for the rest of the morning. What this means for belly fat specifically cuts to something evolutionary. Visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat wrapped around your organs, the kind that correlates most strongly with metabolic disease, is not random. It accumulates in direct response to chronically elevated insulin. Every sustained spike, every repeated hormonal emergency, nudges your body toward depositing more of its energy reserves in the abdomen. This isn't cosmetic. Visceral fat is biologically active. It secretes its own inflammatory signals, cytokines, adipokines, that create a feedback loop of insulin resistance, making future spikes worse and future fat storage more aggressive. You are not failing to lose belly fat because you lack discipline. You may simply be eating your breakfast in the wrong order. Let's dismantle something you've probably believed for years. The dominant narrative in nutrition has been caloric primacy. The idea that a calorie is a calorie, and what matters is the total number you consume versus the total number you burn. This framework has survived decades of diet culture not because it's completely correct, but because it's measurable. It gives the illusion of control through simple arithmetic. But the human body is not a calculator. It's a dynamic hormonal system that evolved to interpret context, not just quantity. 2 people can eat identical breakfasts, 400 calories, 25 grams of protein, 35 grams of carbohydrates, 15 grams of fat. Person A eats the carbohydrate first. Person B eats the protein first. Their insulin responses will diverge within 15 minutes. Their hunger signals will diverge within 2 hours. Their fat storage patterns will diverge over weeks and months. The calories were the same. The biochemistry was completely different. This is why so many people meticulously track their food, eat at a caloric deficit, and still find their waistlines resistant to change. The missing variable isn't in the numbers. It's in the sequence, and it extends beyond breakfast. A 2023 study published in the journal Nutrients expanded the sequencing research to dinner and found that eating vegetables and protein before refined carbohydrates, even an equivalent total intake, significantly reduced postprandial glucose excursions across all metabolic types, including participants who were already insulin resistant, meaning this isn't a strategy just for healthy people to optimize. It works especially well in people whose metabolic signaling is already compromised. If your metabolism has been battered by years of spiked insulin, morning cortisol, processed food, and disrupted sleep, sequencing may be the lowest effort, highest leverage lever you haven't pulled yet. But here's what no one tells you about the mechanism underneath all of this. There's a second-order consequence of chronic insulin spiking that reaches far beyond fat storage, and it lives inside your brain. Insulin receptors exist throughout the central nervous system. Your hippocampus, the structure responsible for memory consolidation and emotional regulation, is densely packed with them. When insulin spikes repeatedly and dramatically, the brain begins to develop what researchers now call central insulin resistance, a state where neural insulin signaling becomes blunted, inefficient, degraded. What does that feel like from the inside? Brain fog, decision fatigue by mid-morning, a quiet, inexplicable feeling of flatness or irritability that you've probably attributed to stress or poor sleep. a reduced capacity for deep focus, a slightly shortened emotional fuse. Your breakfast is talking to your brain. And if it's spiking insulin every morning, your brain is absorbing that conversation and quietly deteriorating. This is why the egg sequencing protocol doesn't just change your body composition over time. People who implement it consistently report something they don't expect: clarity. A sharpness to the first half of the day that feels unfamiliar at first, almost foreign, because they've been running on a post-spike cortisol rebound for so long they forgot what baseline feels like. This is what Dr. Mark Hyman and others in the functional medicine space have been pointing at for years, but often without explaining the specific mechanism. The mechanism is this: stable insulin means stable blood glucose means stable neural energy delivery. Your brain runs on glucose, but it doesn't want a flood. It wants a steady stream. And the egg, eaten first, is the upstream valve that controls the flow. Here's the real revelation, the thing that should shift how you think about every meal for the rest of your life. Your body is not broken. It is not betraying you. It is operating with flawless, ancient precision according to the signals it receives: the fat accumulating around your midsection, the hunger that returns too quickly, the energy that collapses by noon. These are not malfunctions. They are perfect outputs from a perfect machine receiving the wrong inputs. You were never given the instruction manual. You were sold calorie counts and macros and meal plans that ignored the one variable your biology is most sensitive to: order. The sequencing hack isn't a biohack. It isn't new. It isn't complicated. It is simply the act of aligning your eating behavior with the hormonal architecture your body already has, an architecture built over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, designed to process protein and fat before carbohydrate, because in the natural world, you hunted and gathered animal food before you found the fruit. You ate the egg before the berry. Your body still expects that. 2 eggs, before anything else, before the toast, before the oatmeal, before the juice, before the coffee with sugar. Just the eggs first, eaten slowly for 10 minutes, and then everything else. That small act begins a hormonal cascade that blunts insulin, activates GLP-1, suppresses ghrelin, quiets visceral fat storage, and delivers stable neural energy to a brain that has probably been running in reactive mode for years. Try it for 1 day, not for a week, not as a diet, 1 day, just to feel the difference. Not the difference on a scale, not a measurement, but the felt difference, the absence of the 10 a.m. hunger spiral, the presence of focus that doesn't require caffeine to sustain, the strange, quiet sense that your body is running the way it was designed to run. And then ask yourself something. If something this simple, this free, this available, this rooted in your own biology was able to change how you felt in a single day, what else about your body have you been misreading your entire life?